Hey everybody, ronarray here, and my league start went pretty good. I progressed the campaign without a lot of issues, farmed the stone pretty fast, and it's been a pretty nice experience with my Smite Slayer. So in this video, I wanted to give a quick update, showcase what kind of items I'm using right now, and what changes I made to the build in early maps and reaching tier 16s, so the build would feel better, will deal more damage, and generally it will be much more comfortable experience to play that. Let's go, and I will be able to explain all of that and showcase everything that I changed. So let's talk about the changes I made at day 1 for the build to feel a little better and be more efficient. First off, one of the best weapons at the start in my opinion is Rebuke of the Vow, because it's very cheap and you can get a pretty good damage with those. They're also helping you significantly with accuracy, so if you can get a very good rare early on, I think just using Rebuke of the Vow is a very good idea. And at the start, especially at day 1 when you're just getting your stones, I feel like getting double Rebukes is a very good idea too. Later on, we will be able to swap to Shield, because Shield is going to feel much better in the end game, but early on I think just running double swords is a pretty good idea right here. As another option, I've been also using Carnage Heart Amulet, which is pretty nice early on, mostly for stats and elemental resistances. And next step, I've been using rare gloves right here together with suppression and implicits with additional suppression and critical strike chance to maximize my crit. On top of it, for the boots, I also got subground together with spell suppress and increased movement speed. And as the last part of the changes, I pretty much try to use Abyssus as the Might Burgonet. Currently that item is kinda questionable, because it's damaging our survivability, but it can provide up to 40% of additional damage, and I think it's pretty important early on, even if you are alright with dying and not playing hardcore. For the body armor, it's pretty important to get a 6 link early, and if you can get melee hits, have % chance to fortify, is going to be very good because you will be able to change your tree according to that. So for the rings, I'm currently not using taming for a few reasons. First off, I think tamings are a little too expensive right now. I can definitely afford it because I have some divines, but I think running rare rings could be just alright. You can get accuracy on that together with non-channel skills, have less mana cost. That way your mana cost of the skill should be approximately 20, and it's going to feel much better to maintain your mana. And as a belt, I've been using Perseverance for some time, but I honestly believe it's not too important right now, so I just swapped for a belt with elemental damage with attacks together with pretty huge life setup. And since we are currently running double Rebuke of the Vow, I think it's pretty important to showcase all the changes that I made in the tree. And in the tree, we are still going here, taking Bane of Legends, Headsman, Brutal Fervor and Masterful Form. If you feel your damage is not enough, you can literally drop Brutal Fervor and take Overwhelm, because it's going to provide a lot of critical chance for you. You can also swap one gem from critical chance to critical damage, but that's pretty much where we're at the moment. So I prefer to run Brutal Fervor still, because I feel the damage is alright. For the rest of the tree, I currently changed all passives for Shield to passives for Dual Wielding. I'm taking Dual Wielding Mastery as well, just for Elusive, and I'm taking a lot of small nodes around, just Blade Barrier, Ambidextreme, and stuff like that. To make sure that we have endurance charges, we will need to have a few things at the same time. First off, Disciple of Unyielding would help a lot with that. And second, Disciple of Slaughter is going to help with frenzy charges too, so when you're clearing maps, you should probably have both of them. As a mastery, I recommend to get charge duration, because that way you will be able to have charges on you almost all the time. And I'm also taking Versatile Combatant, because I already have a pretty nice block chance, so my chance to block attack damage is 65%, and chance to block spells 25 is versatile. I think it's buffing it not too significantly, but it's a nice bonus. I'm also taking the mastery for blocks, so chance to block spell damage, there are 5% chance to block attack damage, which is pretty nice. And to make sure that you're capping your suppression, you'll need to take Invitorate together with Quick Step, End Range, and roll more of suppression on your items, on the gloves, for example, on the boots, and stuff like that. If you still don't have enough suppression, I recommend to drop a few points here and there, like you can drop weapon artistry for example, and take like spell suppression here. You can also replace weapon elemental damage with movement and spell suppression right here as well. I'm taking all the block nodes here from Brutal Blade to make sure that we have block, and taking all possible like frenzy charges where I can literally touch them. With such setup, we can also utilize cool bonuses for like critical strike chance when you're running dual wielding right here. And I think Ambidextrity currently can provide a pretty decent damage bonus too. So if you still have mana issue, there's a pretty nice option for you when you can just take Thrill of Battle. That way you will get like additional mana per enemy hit with attacks, reduce mana cost with attacks, and you can even get like mana reservation efficiency. But my mana currently is around 81, and I think it's pretty much enough to feel comfortable in the most situations. It's also very important to make sure that your accuracy is just like high enough. So I'm not really taking acuity here, but if your accuracy is not high enough, if you don't have that on the rings, and you can see like you're not really hitting that often, well, in that case, you will definitely need to get acuity right here. So just drop weapon artistry again and take acuity in that case. Another important step that I think we need to maintain is pretty much getting elemental mastery for hits, chance to treat enemy monster elemental resistances values as inverted, because that way you will be able to deal significantly more damage, and I'm 1000% recommending that. And don't forget about non-val strike skills target one additional enemy. I moved it from Gladiator Perseverance to avoid spending more points right here to just Assured Strike. That way we can still get bonuses, and it's feeling pretty nice overall. I don't have that much life, my life is currently about like 4k, right now it's 3835 to be completely precise, and I would probably push it a little further on the items later, but make sure that you have at least 3000 and a half life if you're playing it, because otherwise the build could feel a little too squishy. The biggest issue for the build currently is just getting like physical damage reduction, because we're a little afraid of physical since we're currently using Abyssus as a Might Burgonet. I think in the future I will be able to change that, it's going to be alright, but currently just don't use Abyssus if you feel like your physical is falling too hard. And another important part to comment, I think Tincture right here is very important to maximize your damage on bosses and like against very strong rares. Tincture right here provides elemental damage with melee weapons, and melee weapon damage penetrates elemental resistances. It's going to help you significantly, together with Flask, which will have like global critical strike chance and critical strike chance during effect. So talking about Path of Building, that's where build currently at, and right now I feel like damage could be a little better, and we can improve it maybe with adding a little more passives, and later on we will be able to just replace Rebukes of the Val, but I think like for 1 or 2 days that would be a pretty decent setup. And Abyssus as a Might here is taking a big chunk of our physical max hit. It's also pretty important to keep in mind that you will need to run like Steel Skin with automation, because it's going to provide a pretty huge chunk of your survivability, especially against physical. But as you can see, my max hit numbers are not even that bad, even without a Steel Skin. Another important part that you will need to keep precision approximately around like level 10, maybe 11, to get like 99% hit chance. And that's going to be enough in the most cases for you, but mana management could be a little annoying. So let's talk about Smite supports. I think currently running Trinity together with elemental damage with attacks, multi-strike, inspiration and critical strikes is probably the best setup. You can also see a few other options, for example Volatility is providing a pretty big chunk of damage, and Ruthless by itself could be pretty nice as well. However, I honestly believe that with such setup it's going to be the most comfortable thing, because you're going to hit constantly and it's going to work pretty good overall. You can replace like critical strikes, for example, if you prefer it, or elemental damage with attacks, especially if you need like Fortify or anything else like that. And another important part is just like how we are maintaining Trinity. Since our Rebuke of the Val dealing pretty much all types of elemental damage, Most of the time, Trinity should be pretty easy to maintain. On top of it, we also still have Anger, which providing about 20% of damage, so you should have a very good uptime of Trinity. And now let's talk about another pretty important part, is just what we are going to equip to our Mercenary. So for the Mercenary, I heavily recommend a pretty basic setup. So I'm running Perquel Toes right here, because it gives lightning damage if enemies hitting you is lucky. Next step, I'm running Leer Cast. I think there's a few better options for the helmet right now, but I believe that Leer Cast right here is a pretty good option, mostly because it's very cheap. And the last part, Calm's Binding, is there to make sure that we're going to feel much better together with the Burgenet. So Calm's Binding help a lot on your Mercenary. Generally, I also recommend to run a Mercenary with Aspect of the Spider, because Aspect of the Spider Mercenary is going to help you a lot with just dealing damage, especially against a single target. So most of the time just run like Perquel Toe and Calm's Binding together with Aspect of the Spider. Based on the Mercenary items, I added a few of those bonuses to the PoE as well, so your damage with hits is lucky, your nearby allies gain 50% increased damage, and nearby enemies convert 25 of their physical damage to fire. However, some of those custom modifiers are not really working that good, and it leads to a pretty uncomfortable situation. So in the game, it's feeling a little better, especially considering we have like an Aspect of the Spider, which is adding almost like 1 million of damage, theoretically. But at practice, in the PoE, there is no big change for it. And another interesting point is just like what kind of bindings, what kind of gas we're running. So currently, I'm running like Help Alira together with Soul of the Brine King to help with stuns and freeze mostly, and Soul of Groot Cool, because that way we can get like additional physical damage reduction, and it's definitely feel great. And talking about Merc Survivability, I honestly believe there's not a lot of things you need to add for it. My Merc been surviving just fine in tier 16, even when he has like basic resistances together with basic amount of life and energy shield. However, if you can, I heavily recommend to roll Mercs for higher levels. I would still pick something like a Bladecaster, for example, with Aspect of the Spider, just to maximize the damage from it. But you can also get like other good auras, such as a Wrath, for example, which providing approximately like 20% of damage, which would be pretty good. And if your Merc is dying to like too often, you can change a few of their items just to provide them some survivability. And the last question is how we are generating endurance charges on bosses. So for that, I heavily recommend to just use Enduring Cry. You will need to click it manually, but when you're like close to the boss or like to a very tough rare and you don't have any kind of endurance, you can just click Enduring Cry and you will get more endurance in that situation. In the future, we will be able to replace the boots with Ralacash, which will always have like a maximum amount of endurance charges, and I'm absolutely sure it's going to be much more comfortable. We're also going to swap to Shield back like later on, so stay tuned for the next few updates. Thank you very much for watching as usual, and ronarray out.